Hi, I'm Miss Becky from the Montgomery County Norristown Public Library, and today I'm going to show you how to make some corn. It's going to be a decoration for Thanksgiving or for autumn, whatever you prefer. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, you can just make a decoration. This is only one of the ears of corn, and we'll be making 3 to make the decoration. But I just wanted to show you kind of what the finished result is going to look like eventually. So it's we are approximating Indian corn, and this is also known as calico corn. It's people have called it Indian corn for as long as I remember, and I'm not aware that we're calling it anything else yet, but it seems like everything that has previously been Indian, referring to Native Americans or indigenous people, is being changed because we don't want to be insulting in any way to people who are native to our country. So we'll call it calico corn because that's another name for it. And we're going to make 3 ears of calico corn, and then we're going to bind them all together at the top with some ribbon and make a nice little decoration for you to put up in your house. So I'm going to show you the materials that you need, and if you got a packet from the library, you can kind of skip through this part or watch it. I always make my videos in case there's someone who doesn't have a packet, so that you can be prepared with everything that you need to make the project. So if you're making this from scratch, the first thing you're going to need is the template. You're going to do 1 ear of corn and 2 leaves for every ear of corn you make. So you need to have the template and the leaf to do that, to cut that out of the fabric. The fabric you're going to need colors in calico corn colors, which are somewhat fall colors, but if I'm going to show you a photo of the range of colors that calico corn come in. So you have quite a few options. I've chosen some traditionally fall colored. It's kind of a brownish orange, and there's an orange, there's yellow, there's sort of a reddish, maroony red color. But calico corn also comes in kind of a deep purple color, sometimes almost black, sometimes blue, sometimes white or yellowish white with, bits of colored kernels stuck in there. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. But those are, if you want to stay true to what calico corn looks like, refer to that photo and choose your fabrics accordingly. You're going to need either a light yellow, gray, beige, off-white fabric for the leaves, because when they dry, they get that color. Even a pale green or a pale yellow would work for that. So that's your fabric. There's your template. You will need, of course, a sewing machine. This is an optional thing. If you want to go to the fabric store and get some of this, this is called interfacing. And interfacing is an extra layer inside your project that gives it a little stiffness. And I used it for the leaves on this one so that they would stand up a bit more. There's a kind of an extra layer inside that's stiff, and that makes it. I did make it without at first, and they flopped, and I didn't really like the way that looked, so I stuck some interfacing in there. So you can get this at the fabric store. Probably medium weight would be good, and that always comes with directions on how to use it. So be sure, if you buy it, you probably would only need like 1/8 or 1/4 of a yard for this project. The smallest bit that they will let you buy. And always make sure you get the directions to go with it. So, and don't throw this away, because this tells you how to, this is iron-on, so this tells you how to iron it onto the fabric. And you want to do that right, because it can melt if you use too high of a temperature, or you can just mess it up if you're not doing the right thing. So if you want to have some a little stiffness in your leaves, then go ahead and get some interfacing. You're going to need a pair of sharp scissors. I like to have one pair of scissors in my house that is dedicated for fabric only, because if you cut scissors, if you use fabric scissors to cut paper, it's going to make the blades dull, and you don't want that. You want nice crisp cutting when you're cutting fabric. You will need some straight pins. Here is my pin tomato. I have these pins with little balls on the end, which help you to see where they are and help you to pull them out easier. But if all you have are these little straight pins with the metal tops, that's perfectly fine. Whatever will hold your two pieces of fabric together as you sew will work fine. You'll need a needle and some thread that matches your corn, because you are going to do a little hand sewing to sew the opening together after you turn it right side out. You will need a pen or a pencil to mark your fabric when you cut it out, and you're going to need some fiber fill, and that's this fluffy, stuffy stuff that goes on the inside of your corn. Makes it squishy. So I think that's everything you're going to need. If I think of anything else, I'm sure I will tell you later. So I'm going to start with my corn. You are going to end up with 6 corn pieces, because you need, for every corn ear you make, you're going to need 2 of these. So I've got I'm going to use this kind of brownish orangish fabric, and you always make sure that you have your fabric going the right way, and you always want to make sure that your template goes with the direction of the fabric. You don't want it all cattywampus on there. So I'm going to fold my fabric in half, because then I only have to cut one time. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either take your pen or pencil. Always use the back of the fabric for this if you're marking, so that it doesn't show up at the bottom. And you want to make sure your template is straight. You can either trace around your template. I used a old file folder to make this because it's stiff and holds up better when I trace around it, like so. I want to make sure I didn't go, oh, I did. So you gotta, when you're using stuff you used before, you gotta make sure it all matches up. Let's start that over. So I'm gonna go around, and this is why you do this on the wrong side. And if you don't know which the side is right or wrong, just check your pattern. It's very obvious here. The side is much brighter and more defined. The design is more defined than this side. So you keep your right sides together, trace around, or you can get your straight pins and pin them down and cut around your template. Whatever you like to do the best, however you feel most comfortable, do whatever works for you. So I'm just gonna cut around this, and like I said, you'll have to do this 3 times to get 3 ears. Let's do this right here. Okay. See how nicely these scissors cut, because they're nice and sharp. And I'm not hacking away at the fabric. It's usually better if you can lay it down on a surface, but this is not cooperating. So I'm just gonna cut it like this. Come on, almost there, almost there. Make sure I got it right all the way around. Okay, it's a little uneven here. I'm just going to trim this up. We can fix our mistakes as we go. Okay, so we have 2 pieces of this. And you see the pattern is going straight. And then we're going to do 2 pieces of the leaf material. As you can see, I've used this before, so I'm just going to cut off an edge here. Match this up. Oh, I need to get on the inside. See how it fits. Close enough. Now I need 4 of these. I'm just going to mark it here. So there's 2. And if it's not quite exact, that's okay. Because nothing in nature is perfect. Well, I shouldn't say that. There are things that aren't perfect in nature. So it's okay. I'm just going to put a pin here and a pin here, just so it doesn't shift as I cut. Yeah, this way, with that kind of template, this way works better. Cutting it this way. And I'm on a fold, so I'm just going to cut that open there. I should have ironed this, but I didn't. But that's okay. You want to be precise and crisp and perfect. You can iron your fabric. Okay, so we have 4 of the leaf pieces. And 2 of the corn pieces. And that's for 1 ear. You're going to have to do this for every ear you make. So you'll end up with 12 leaves and 6 corn pieces. Okay, so now we're going to do some interfacing. Oops, bumpity bump. We're going to do some interfacing for those leaves. And I'm just going to use some scrap interfacing that I have, because I'm not going to cut that whole big piece up right now. That'll be for a bigger project. And these should fit just fine on here. Actually, I should use the template. That would make more sense. Okay, so you'll notice one side is kind of bumpy, and that is the adhesive. the iron-on adhesive that will kind of meld with your fabric once you heat it. So we want to mark on the side that doesn't have that. I'll make it a lot easier. I'm going to take my pen, trace around. Then I'm going to flip it and go this way so I have a flat edge when I cut this off. Okay. There are my two, and you need half as many pieces of interfacing as you have leaves. So I have 4 leaves. Divided by 2, or halved, or divided by 2 is 2. Yes, sewing involves math, believe it or not. There's a lot of measurements involved. And you use fractions because of the size of your the width of your seams. If you're making clothing, you need to measure your body. So as usual, my video cut out while I was in the middle of explaining things. I did get both pieces of interfacing cut out. What you want to do is put your fabric with the right side down, and again, compare the front and the back. You can see the front. This is a little harder with this, but this side is a little bit darker than this side. So this side is the right side. We're going to put those down, right side down. And then the part of the interfacing that has the adhesive, it's rougher, it's bumpy. You're going to put that adhesive side down on the wrong side of the fabric, like that. Okay. So I am going to iron this on. As I said, if you bought this from the store, you should have directions on how to do this when you purchased it. So I'm just going to go ahead and take care of that. There is a specific way that you need to do it, so you really do need directions. I will come back when that is finished. So my interfacing is ironed on. It's attached. And it did kind of, it's a little uneven, so I'm just going to trim off the edges that are sticking out, because that just adds extra bulk to the seams, and we don't need that. When you're working with small pieces of projects, you really don't want a lot of bulkiness. It's hard to maneuver. Okay, so there's our interfacing leaf. So now we're going to put that interfacing face down. We're going to take our other non-interface piece and put that right sides together. So the wrong side with the interfacing goes down. The right side of the other piece goes against the right side of the bottom piece. And you do that for both pieces. I'm just going to pin in a couple of places just so it doesn't shift as I sew. It's really not necessary to pin it all the way around. It's not going to move that much. It's a small piece, so it's going to be pretty quick to sew that. So we have our machine. It's threaded with some sort of white or off-white thread, whatever you have. And we're going to put it in under the presser foot. We're going to start right at the very edge of the fabric. We're going to use the edge of the presser foot as our guide for our seam allowance. That's the amount of fabric left on the other side of the sewing. So we're going to make sure we have 2 threads coming out of our machine and that they're out of the way. And then we're going to lower our presser foot down on the fabric, and we're going to sew. I just like to hang on to these for a couple of stitches just to make sure I know where they are and they're out of the way. And away we go. I'm going to take this out since we're past that part now. This is a small piece, so don't go too fast. See, this is bunching up a little bit, so I'm just going to let that go. When we get down to the tip, we're going to have to do a pivot. So, for some reason, the top piece is a little bit bigger than the bottom. So what we're going to do when we get to the pivot is we're going to go almost to the tip, but we're going to stay a quarter of an inch away from the opposite edge, like this. And we're just going to keep going. This is going to be a little more than a quarter of an inch because this is sticking out over the edge. So you're going to put your needle down into the fabric, use that little wheel on the side of your machine, lift up your presser foot, and pivot. Now we're going to go the other way. I'm going to leave myself some room because that's sticking out too far. But this is how it's done. And then you sew the other way. Put me back to the edge there. Keep your presser foot aligned with the edge of your fabric. And keep sewing. Okay, so I'm going to do a little back stitch here. Machine back up a little bit, and that just kind of makes the stitch a little sturdier there at the edge where it's going to get a lot of force, because when you turn it right side out, that's where it's going to come out at. So you see I've sewn up around to the tip and back down, and I've left this edge open because that's where we're going to turn it right side out. So now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. And hopefully this isn't as wonky as the first side. Okay, so make sure we know where our threads are. Hold them down for a second. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. And that just wants to shift on its own, so I'm just going to let it. As long as everything is flat when you're finished, that's what counts. Okay, so we're about to the tip, and I'm going to put my needle down in. The needle helps keep it in place so you don't lose where you've already sewn. Flip it around, put it on the other side. Make sure you stay even with the edge of the presser. I was getting in the way. Back stitch a few, and your threads won't pull apart at the edge while you're yanking at it. Okay, so I'm just going to trim off my extra threads, get those out of the way. Now we're ready to turn this right side out. So what you're going to do first is we are going to trim off that tip, and be sure that you don't cut your stitches. So you're going to trim really close, but don't cut the stitches. See that? And I'm just going to trim because it got a little wider here. I'm just going to trim that down a little bit at the edge. And you can trim off a little closer at the tip. Because when you turn this right side out, if you've got a lot of fabric in your corners, you're going to have a lump there, and you don't want that lump. So I'm going to do that to this one too. I'm going to trim off right above the stitches. Go down in my machine, and then I'm just going to trim this a little bit. Just always be careful of where your stitches are, that you don't cut anything. Okay, so now we're going to turn these right side out. Okay, so now we're going to turn the right side out. So you're going to take that bottom that you left open, and we're going to have to, this takes a little finagling, little fiddling to try and get this started. You just turn the edges under and you pull, pinch and pull. Sometimes it helps to sort of roll up that inner part so that it comes up. The beginning is the hardest part because it's the narrowest part. Well, once you get through there, you sort of have to keep working it. Pull the edge down whenever you get a little bit up. Keep prying it open. Folding it over, pulling the bottom, keep going inside and pushing it open. And just like turning your socks right side out. Keep going, keep going. Almost there. You keep opening up. You can pinch down further and push up. And once you're almost all the way out, you can take a blunt pencil or a knitting needle, an unclicked pen, unclick, and you can sort of push it the rest of the way. Just gently. You don't want to poke a hole. Just kind of push at it a little bit till you get that point pushed out. And see, if we hadn't cut that end off, I mean, there's still a bump there, but if we hadn't cut that end off, there would be an even bigger bump. So now we're going to just flatten that all out, pull out the bottom, make sure it's all flat and opened up, and then we're going to press it flat with the iron. Okay, so now I have my leaves all turned out, and for some reason these turned out a lot narrower than the first ones I did, and I don't know why, because I used the same template. But so now I'm going to iron these flat. Just get the lumps and wrinkles out. Flip it over. Boop. Okay, steamy, steamy. Just be careful. This is a hot thing that can burn you. As if I've never done that before. Okay, so now we've got flat leaves. So you can leave them like this. What I did with the other ones is I sewed kind of a rib down the middle and around the edges just to make it a little bit flatter, maybe a little bit more lifelike. You can skip that part. I'm just going to show you how though. First of all, you want to make sure you have both your threads from your machine. You know where they are. We're going to do a 1/8 inch around the edge. On my plate on my machine, I have fractions, 1/8, 3/8, 5/8, quarter, 4/8, and that is a guide to how wide to make your seams. So I'm going to follow this 1/8. If you don't have that on your machine, just try to keep close to the edge without going off the edge. And we're going to sew around the outside. Just go all the way around. We're going to get to the tip and we're going to pivot. Just like we did on the inside. So you get almost to the edge, but not quite. Bring your needle down, pivot, find the 1/8 inch mark there, or just eyeball it, It might bog up a little bit sewing over the tip, and that's okay. You can just sort of push it through or lift your presser foot and try to pull it. Most of the time you don't need to pull anything, but once in a while your machine says, I don't want to do that. And then you have to say, oh yes, you're going to do it. And you make it. Okay, so now we got almost to the bottom. We're going to sew halfway across to get approximately the middle. You don't have to be perfect because, as I said, there are imperfections in nature. Plus, no one's really going to be looking closely at your stitches here. So we're going to just pivot, and then we're going to sew straight up the middle. Or as close as you can figure. That way we give the husk a little definition. Okay, get to the tip. I'm going to do a couple of back stitches just to secure my thread. Okay, and then pull it out. Trim your threads very close because they're sticking out right there. Both sides. And then trim your bottom threads. Okay, so now you've got your leaf with a little kind of a vein down the middle, and it looks a bit more realistic, if you will, and we proceed. So now I've done both of the leaves, and now we're going to sew everything all together. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to kind of fold these leaves up a little bit so that they're a little bunchy. So I'm going to kind of do this, sort of fold them in half. Now you're going to take one of your corn pieces with the right side up, wrong side down. Up at the wider part at the top, we're going to pin these leaves, the husks, whatever you want to call it. And where are my pins? Over by the machine. Ugh, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to pin these. Now this is going to kind of bog your machine down a little bit because it's double, quadruple thickness, whatever. But we'll just have to take it slowly through that section. So I am pinning that one. Kind of looks like rabbit ears. Pinning that one. Come on, out the other side. There we go. Okay, now you want to make sure that these don't get caught up in your stitches. So I'm just going to flatten these down and put another pin. It's a little close to the edge, so I'm going to pull that over. Put these in the center. Oh, and that's kind of bunched up, so I'm going to reposition that a little bit. Okay, now we're going to put this one right side down on top. Try to pin it in place as best we can. A little bit, just be aware that those leaves inside are going to be a little bit bulky to pin over. We'll do the best we can. Just smooth everything. Smooth everything out. You can't see what I'm doing. Flatten it down. Maybe get one on each side of this. Okay, so when we sew this, we're going to leave an opening about 2 inches. And we're going to do it kind of down here. And you can use a pen or pencil and just mark. I'll just put a mark here so we know where to start and where to end. About like that. So we're going to sew all the way around, and then we're going to stop there and leave this open because we need somewhere to turn it right side out. Okay, so we're going to start here where we made that mark. We're going to make sure we have both of our threads out. We're going to position it right at the edge, and we're going to do a couple of back stitches to start. Whoop. I think I have to get rid of this pin. It's kind of in the way now. Okay, keep on going. Oh, see what happened here is my two sides are a little bit uneven, so I have to be mindful of that when I get to the bottom. I don't want to sew too close to the edge. Whatever side is the shortest is the one you go by, so let's see what happens when we get down there. And we're just using the edge of the presser foot as our guide, our seam allowance guide. Now we're going to do a little bit of a pivot here because we have a tight curve, so we're going to put our needle down, lift your presser foot. You're just going to turn it just a smidge. You don't have to do a 45-degree angle like you do for a corner. Okay, a couple more stitches. I'm just going to check that under thing. I'm getting close to that. Stitch or two. And then I'm going to pivot again, go across the bottom a bit. I may have to redo this part. Might be a little too close underneath, but we'll see. Pivot just a little bit. A couple of stitches. Down in. A couple more. And then turn it. And voila, we're around the tip. Just keep your fabric smooth. Try not to sew over any lumps. Be careful of those leaves underneath. This is just a little bit tricky doing this. I might need to do a pivot again, or maybe not. I think I'm just going to do a little bit of one. Now we're coming up on where it's the top of the leaves are, so we're gonna, Sheen might complain a little bit. You can hear her going thump, 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 going through the thick fabric. If you have a kind of basic model machine, you might have more trouble than if you have a one that has more features like mine. Just gonna turn that a little bit. Okay, we're coming up to that other mark. And again, we're gonna back stitch just to make that a little bit stronger there at the opening. Now, I'm gonna check the back side of this just to be sure all my stitches are far enough away from the edge. Now look, see there, it got a little close to the edge, so I'm going to re-sew just that section right there. Everything else looks okay. Alright, so I'm just going to come, and you see how that happened is because the fabric shifted a little bit, and this side is longer than that side. So if I followed the 1/4 inch seam allowance there, it got too close underneath. We just have to take our time and watch out for things. So we don't. And if I could have left that go because there is a bit of a seam allowance there, but I don't want to take the chance that it could pop open and make a hole and my stuffing falls out. That would be unfortunate. Okay, now we're all the way around. I'm just going to do a couple stitches back. Okay. Alrighty then. Trim your threads. And I'm going to trim off that excess there so we don't really need it. And it's just going to add some extra bulk inside that we don't need. So I'm trimming off the threads. Always trim your threads as you go. It's a lot easier than having to find them all at the end. Okay, I'm very close to the end of this. Oh, okay, that's... Okay, so now we have to carefully open this up because we pinned everything down. So I'm just going to see if I can find that pin there. Pull that pin out. Now remember we pinned it down up here too. And something I should have done instead was stitch it down before we stitched all the way around. But I didn't think to do that at the time. So just very carefully pull that out so that you don't poke yourself with your pins as you're turning things right side out. And this time you can get your fingers in there, so it's a lot easier. You don't have a point to push out, so you can probably just get everything with your index finger, or maybe like the blunt end of your scissors or something. Get in the hole there. Sort of poke on that a little bit. You don't ever want to poke too hard because you run the risk of poking a hole. Okay, so I'm going to just stick my finger in up at the top there. It kind of looks like a carrot. Not supposed to look like a carrot. All right. So now that got a little off, but I'm not going to worry about that too much because we're going to tie a ribbon around the top anyway, and that's going to all be covered. If you want this to look more natural, you can try to like bunch it up instead of folding it, but I just figured folding would be easier. All right, so now we're going to stuff it. So now I have a handful of the fiber fill, the fluffy stuff with which you fluff and stuff. So I'm going to take just a small piece and stuff it up into the tip. You want to get the far sides filled up before you start doing other things. So I'm just going to kind of poke that in until it's all the way down in the bottom. And then just grab small pieces. Don't take a big, don't take a big wad, because the small pieces you can shift around better once you get them in there. Okay, so that looks pretty good for the bottom. Now we're going to turn around and do the other end. Stuff it up in there. And we don't want it too firm. We just want it filled, but it's still a little squishy. So I'm going to take another small. I'm going to just stick some small pieces in here until I feel like it's right. It's still a little floppy in the middle. So I'm just gonna a little more here. Okay, so it looks pretty good. Pretty fairly firm, but not too hard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fold under these raw edges at the hole 1/4 inch, the same width as the rest of the seam, and we're going to sew those edges together. So we need our needle and we need some thread, and I'm just going to pull a bit of thread out, like maybe 1/2 an arm length, and I'm going to double it. Get too close to things here. And then I'm going to thread this needle. So I'm going to bring the two ends together. Try not to get them all tangled up. Match the two ends. Fingers are dry, you might want to dampen them up a little bit with some water or lick them like I sometimes do. You're gonna wrap them, wrap it around your, start over, pinch it, wrap it around, pinch, make sure they cross, pinch, and then you're gonna roll it off of your finger and pull it, pinch it with your fingernails and pull it tight. And there, I don't know if you can see the knot. It's there. I'll do it again. So you pinch the end, wrap it around, and then you're going to roll. As you roll, the threads wind around each other, and then you're just going to pinch and pull, and then you have a knot on the end. Because if you don't have a knot, your thread is just going to pull right out. I'm going to cut off this little tail close to the knot so that it's not, doesn't stick out anywhere. So now I'm going to bring us down a little bit closer here. Lefty loosey here. Okay. So you can maybe see things a little bit better here. All right, so now take our needle, and I'm going to go inside so that I can hide this knot. So go inside the hole, come out close to the edge of the hole. So now we're going to do a ladder stitch. What a ladder stitch is, you're going to go straight across, and then you're going to come up and out and then come straight across. So when you're finished, your stitches are going to kind of look like a ladder going across there. So I'm going to come down close to the folded edge, and then we want to make sure that stays folded. And if you want, you can pin them together. This doesn't want to hold the fold, so I think I might just do that. Make it easier to see. So you fold your edges in and grab a pin and just kind of pin it in place. Pin with the point away from where you're in the same direction you're sewing so you don't poke yourself when you get up there. Okay, so now I'm going to go down in straight across from where I came up, and I'm going to take a stitch inside the fold and then come out, pull it tight. Now I'm going to come straight across to the other side, and that's not sticking out so well. And I'm going to go, now that pin is in the way, I'm going to come straight across, go down in, whoop, go down into the fold and make a little stitch inside, right on the edge of the fold, basically. We're going to pull it tight. Lost my needle. So now we're going to come up and we're going to go straight across again. I'm going to go down just a little bit into the fold and come right back up and come out right on the fold. Stop doing that. One step, wrap around. Okay, so now we're going to go straight across to the other side. Down in, come up a little bit, down into the fold and right back up. This is a good stitch to know for mending. If you have two sides that you need to put together and you don't have a sewing machine handy, this makes a nearly invisible seam. As you can see, you can't see. So across to this side, little stitch, come up in the fold, pull it tight. Now we're going to go down in there, come up in the fold, and we have a knot. Naughty. Stop doing that. It's all twisted up. I don't know if you can see how twisted that got. I don't know why it does that. Seriously. Stop twisting up. It only does this when I'm on camera. When I'm sewing for myself, it never happens. Believe that. Okay, what is... Okay. I'm gonna try to smooth that out a little bit so that doesn't keep happening. Oh, oops. Have to refold that. We don't want to come too close to the edge or it'll fall apart. I'm going to repin. Okay, so we came up on, which side did we come up on? This side. So we're coming across, you can't see it. Up on the left side, so we're going down on the right side, come up a little stitch. Okay, and then we're going across, right to left, down into the fold, little stitch in the fold, come right back up. Down into the right, little stitch and come up. Okay, down into the right, little stitch. Just try to keep your stitches even, same length every time, as much as you can. Left, we're coming over to the right, stitch, come up. I think I can get rid of this pin now. I think we're good. Almost closed. Go down the opposite side, little stitch, come up, stop wrapping around. And from left, we go down into the right. Little stitch, come up, down and to the left, stitch just at the end now, and down and a little stitch. Okay, so now we have to tie it off, and you see, pull it snug but not too tight. You don't want it to pucker up, and that's that little tiny tail that I left on there. Okay, so if you did it right, you can almost not see where you sew. So now I'm just going to take another little stitch. I'm just going to go across here. Just a little stitch. And I'm going to pull it almost tight. I'm going to leave a little loop. I'm going to take my needle up through, pull it tight, and that made a little knot there. I'm going to take another little stitch, just a little one, doesn't have to be huge. Just want to tie off our thread. Pull it almost tight but not quite. Put your needle through the loop and then pull it tight. And then you've got a double knot there. Then stick your needle down in, close to where you stitched, and just go down into the fluff and come out somewhere and pull it tight. This time you can bunch it, because what's going to happen is when you let it go, your tail is going to disappear inside. So you just have a little tiny bit of a knot there that you can see, but otherwise, and this is why if you use thread that matches your fabric, you won't even see that. And now your corn is done. So now you have the materials, if you got a library packet, to make 3 of these corn doojobbies. So now we're going to gather 3 of them together like this. So now you're going to take your ribbon, and I have this nice sort of autumny coppery looking ribbon, and you're going to make like you're tying your shoe. You're going to make an overhand knot over and through. Okay, so I said about a yard. In the directions I said about a yard of fabric. Okay, so you're going to pull it tight. Now you have one piece that goes up and one piece that goes down. Now fold over the one piece that goes down to make the one loop. Then you're going to bring this one over top of that. You're going to go around the tree and up through the hole. Is that how you learned how to tie your shoe? And then pull it tight. And just kind of work with it till you get your loops even. Pull the edges a bit till they're the size you want. You don't want to overwhelm your husks there or your corn. So make it just like that, maybe. And just tighten it up at the back. Fluff out your loops so they're nice and pretty. And then you can cut off your ribbon. You could do a little diagonal to make it look decorative there. There you go. And let me put this up so we can see better. There is your corn. I'm going to twist this one a little bit. I don't like the way it's tilted there. And there you go. You could hang this on your door. You could arrange it on a table as a decoration. You could, hang it on a wall as a decoration in your kitchen or wherever. And if you want to, you can not a piece of thread. So a few little stitches back here in the back where you can't see to kind of hold your ribbon in place, and just tie it off the way you learned how. And there you go. There is your Thanksgiving calico corn decoration. And I hope your family likes it. I hope it turned out well. I would love to see photos. If you want to email me at rhoover@mclink, mclinc.org, or you can post a picture to our Facebook page. I would love to see your finished results. Enjoy your project and have a happy Thanksgiving if I don't see you before then. Take care.